They weren't bound by flesh, time, or even death. In ancient Ireland, gods could become rivers, warriors turned into wolves, and beauty itself might wear a dozen faces before dawn. These weren't fairy tales. They were lessons in power. Meet the Irish shapeshifters who rewrote reality long before magic had a name. And it all begins with the ones who shaped the world itself. Divine shapeshifters in Irish mythology weren't just gods who could change form. They were cosmic forces given personality. When a deity shifted from woman to crow, from youth to elder, from human to river, it represented something fundamental. The divine is not static. It moves with the world. It adapts to necessity. These gods embodied the idea that true power lies in flexibility, not rigidity. We can understand these transformations through three distinct patterns: the battle changers, the cycle keepers, and the river walkers. The battle changers represent transformation as tactical adaptation. At the forefront stands the Morrigan, goddess of war and fate. Picture a battlefield where chaos reigns. Warriors clash, horses scream, blood soaks into earth. A crow circles overhead, but this is no ordinary bird. It's the Morrigan, watching, choosing who lives and who dies. She doesn't maintain one form. She becomes a crow, then a wolf tearing through enemy lines, then an eel wrapping around a hero's legs in a river, then a cow leading warriors into ambush. Each shape serves a purpose. War itself has many faces: terror, confusion, raw strength. The Morrigan embodied all of them. Her complexity deepens further. The Morrigan had three aspects that could act independently. Bab represented battle frenzy and madness, appearing as a hooded crow, shrieking prophecies of death. Macha embodied sovereignty and the land's claim on its defenders. Nemen brought pure chaos, the panic that seizes armies when defeat becomes inevitable. Each could shapeshift separately, creating a web of divine influence across any conflict. Lugh, god of skill and mastery, offers a different perspective. Often depicted as a young warrior or mature craftsman, folklore hints he could take animal forms as well. What matters most about Lugh's shapeshifting is its representation. Mastery itself requires adaptation. He became a warrior when battle called, an artisan when creation was needed, a king when leadership mattered. Moving to the cycle keepers, we encountered deities whose transformations marked the turning of seasons and the passage of time. The Cailleach serves as the prime example. As winter goddess, she appears during cold months as an old woman, sometimes a hag with one eye. Every spring, she transforms into a young maiden, vibrant and full of life. As the year turns toward winter again, she ages back into her crone form. She is the seasons made flesh. Her shapeshifting isn't personal whim, but cosmic necessity. Etein's story explores transformation as rebirth. She began as a goddess, beautiful and powerful. Jealousy struck when a rival turned her into a fly, tiny and fragile. She spent years drifting on the wind. Eventually, she fell into a cup of wine and was swallowed, then reborn as a human woman with no memory of her divine past. Later, her true nature was revealed, and she returned to the other world. Etein's journey tells us something profound. Identity can be broken and rebuilt. What you were doesn't have to be what you are. The river walkers represent transformation so complete it literally reshaped the land. Boann provides the clearest example. She was a goddess who defied sacred rules, approaching a forbidden well. The waters rose up and overwhelmed her, chasing her across the landscape. Everywhere she fled, water followed, carving a channel through Ireland. She became the River Boyne, one of the country's most important waterways. Sinan's tale mirrors this pattern. She sought the well of wisdom, a source of forbidden knowledge guarded by ancient powers. When she reached for its secrets, the waters surged up and swept her away. She became the River Shannon, Ireland's longest river. Her transformation was both punishment and apotheosis. She lost her human form, but gained immortality as a force of nature. Consider the difference between these transformation types. The Morrigan appears as a crow on a battlefield, but she can shift back. She chooses her form. Boann becomes the Boyne and cannot return. Her transformation is final. This distinction reveals something subtle. The ancient Irish understood there are temporary changes and permanent ones. There are disguises you can shed, and metamorphoses you can't undo. Imagine a warrior preparing for battle, who has heard the druids say, "The Morrigan will appear." He scans the sky for crows. Every bird becomes an omen. He checks the river for strange movements. He watches the cattle. One goddess who shifts forms has changed his entire perception of reality. Every creature might be divine. Every natural thing might be watching. Divine shapeshifters in Irish mythology served as teachers. They demonstrated that power isn't about size or strength. It's about adapting, meeting each moment with the right form. They reminded people that change, even dramatic, frightening change, can be divine. The Morrigan shifting to a crow wasn't diminishing herself. She was expanding her reach. The Cailleach aging into winter wasn't dying. She was preparing for rebirth. Now we move from divine heights down into the depths, where the waters themselves hold beings that transform. The ancient Irish were more afraid of lakes than they were of wolves. Water shapeshifters reveal how cultures process their deepest fears and transform mystery into story. Water is the ultimate shapeshifter. It exists as solid ice, liquid in rivers, invisible as mist. It gives life and takes it away. Naturally, beings that lived in water were seen as equally changeable, equally dangerous. Water shapeshifters weren't gods like the Morrigan. They occupied the liminal space between human and animal, between surface and depth. These beings fall into three categories: the skin changers, the drowning deceivers, and the deep dwellers. The skin changers offer the most poignant tales of dual existence. Selkies are the most famous. Imagine a seal swimming near shore. You watch from the rocks. The seal pulls itself onto land, then impossibly begins to shed its skin. Underneath is a human, stunningly beautiful, vulnerable, confused by air and gravity. That's a Selkie. In seal form, they're creatures of the sea. In human form, they're capable of love, grief, and all the complications of mortal life. The tragedy lives here. Many stories tell of fishermen who find a Selkie shed skin, while the Selkie walks in human form. If you hide the skin, the Selkie can't return to the sea. Often, she marries the man who took her skin, has children, lives years as a human wife. Yet she always remembers the ocean. She always searches. When she finally finds her hidden skin, she puts it on and returns to the waves, leaving her human family behind. Selkies represent dual identity and the painful truth that some people can never fully belong to one world. The skin isn't just a disguise. It's their true self, their way home. When someone hides it, they're not simply trapping a body, they're imprisoning a soul. Turning to the drowning deceivers, we encounter water shapeshifters with one purpose: to lure humans to their deaths. The Eachwisi, the Irish water horse, is the most terrifying example. Picture a beautiful horse standing by a lake on a misty morning. It looks tame, almost friendly. Perhaps you're tired from traveling. You climb on its back. The moment you're seated, your hands stick to its skin like glue. The horse gallops toward the lake. You're screaming, pulling, but you can't get free. It plunges into the water, dragging you down to the depths. The each wish doesn't just drown you, it devours you, leaving only your liver floating to the surface. This gruesome specificity makes the creature feel more real. This wasn't vague danger. This was a specific nightmare. The Kelpie is similar, appearing as a horse, or sometimes as a handsome young person standing by a river. Its purpose remains the same: tempt, trap, drown. The key difference is their habitat: rivers rather than lakes, moving water rather than still. This matters because rivers are paths. They're how you travel. The idea that the very thing helping you cross could suddenly betray you made every ford, every crossing, a moment of risk. These stories existed not just to scare children away from water. They reflected real danger. People drowned in lakes and rivers constantly. Water is deceptive. It looks calm and then suddenly isn't. A horse-shaped drowning creature was a way to explain the unexplainable. The deep dwellers live primarily underwater, but can cross into the human world when they choose. Merrows are Irish merfolk, similar to mermaids but with distinct differences. They wear red caps called Cothúlín Druith. These caps are magical. With them, Merrows can travel between sea and land, breathing in both worlds. Without them, they're trapped in the sea. Some Merrow women married human men and lived on land for years, but like Selkies, they always kept their caps hidden. When they found their caps again, they returned to the sea. A pattern emerges. Water beings can love humans, can even build lives with them, but the water always calls them back. The sea hag of Beara, also called Cailleach Beara in her ocean aspect, exists as both goddess and monster, aging and renewing with the tides. When the tide goes out, she's an ancient crone. When it comes in, she's younger, more vital. She represents the ocean's dual nature. It gives and it takes, it creates and destroys. It's ancient and ever new. Consider a coastal village where everyone knows about Selkies, Ichuisi, Kelpies, Merrows. A young woman stands by the water at twilight. She sees something beautiful in the waves. Is it a seal? A horse? A person? She can't quite tell. That uncertainty changes everything about how she approaches the water. She's cautious. She's respectful. She doesn't assume anything in the water is what it seems. Water shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish to respect boundaries. Between land and sea, between human and animal, between the world you can see and the world beneath the surface. They were expressions of water's essential nature. Beautiful, necessary, and utterly indifferent to human survival. This understanding points us to our next truth. Not all shapeshifters live in water or sky. Some walk on 4 legs and remember what it's like to stand on 2. What if you could become an animal but keep your human mind? Animal shapeshifters reveal something profound. The ancient Irish believed the line between human and animal was far thinner than we think today. Animal shapeshifters weren't people who turned into mindless beasts. They were humans who took animal form while retaining their consciousness, their memories, their essential selves. This differs from possession or madness. It's a deliberate crossing, a partnership between human reason and animal instinct. These transformations divide into 3 categories: the cursed walkers, the wisdom carriers, and the battle beasts. The cursed walkers show transformation as burden passed through generations. The werewolves of Ossory, called Fólad, provide the clearest example. In medieval Irish texts, there's an account of a priest travelling through Ossory. He meets a wolf in the forest. The wolf speaks to him in human language. It explains that it was once a man. cursed along with its wife to live as wolves for 7 years. After 7 years, they would return to human form, and another couple would take their place. What's remarkable? These werewolves kept their human reason and speech. They didn't become savage. They remained themselves, just in a different body. The wolf even asks the priest to give last rites to its dying wife. The priest pulls back the wolf's skin and sees an old woman beneath. The Faolad weren't evil. They were victims of a curse, possibly a punishment on their ancestors, now inherited by people who had done nothing wrong. They represent the weight of generational burden. Yet they adapted. They lived as wolves, but remained human in spirit. Moving to the wisdom carriers, we find beings who transformed not as punishment, but as a way to preserve knowledge across impossible spans of time. Tuan Macairil serves as the ultimate example. He was the last survivor of the first people to settle Ireland. Everyone he knew died, but he didn't. Instead, he transformed. First, he became a stag, then a wild boar, then a hawk, then a salmon. Finally, the salmon was caught and eaten by a queen, and Tuan was reborn as a human child, retaining all his memories from all his forms. His transformations served a purpose. He was the memory keeper. He witnessed every age of Ireland's history. As a stag, he saw the coming of new peoples. As a boar, he survived in the wild. As a hawk, he surveyed the changing landscape from above. As a salmon, he lived in the waters that connected all the land. Each form gave him a different perspective, a different kind of survival. Tuan's transformations teach us something valuable. Perspective matters. If you only ever see the world from one angle, you only understand part of it. Become a deer, and you understand vulnerability and grace. Be a boar, and you understand solitary strength. Be a hawk, and you understand freedom. Be a salmon, and you understand return, migration, the pull of home. Then there's the salmon of knowledge, connected to Fionn Mac Cumhaill. The salmon lived in a sacred pool, eating hazelnuts that fell from the tree of wisdom. Each nut contained all knowledge. A poet named Finnegas spent 7 years trying to catch this salmon. When he finally did, he gave it to his young apprentice Fionn to cook. As Fionn cooked it, hot fat splashed onto his thumb. He put his thumb in his mouth to cool the burn, and in that instant, he absorbed all the salmon's wisdom. This is transformation through ingestion, through consuming the animal's essence. Fionn didn't become a salmon, but he gained what the salmon was, pure accumulated knowledge. He carried the salmon's gift inside himself forever. The battle beasts represent warriors who shapeshifted during combat. Cú-Glas, the greyhound warrior, offers one example. Stories describe him transforming during battle, becoming a fusion of man and beast, fighting with inhuman strength and speed. In the heat of combat, the human form wasn't enough. You needed to tap into something wilder. The Fianna, Fionn's legendary band of warriors, was said to channel animal spirits for strength and speed. They didn't fully transform, but they borrowed animal qualities. A warrior might gain the endurance of a stag, the ferocity of a boar, the keen sight of a hawk. Animal shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that humans are not separate from nature. We're part of it. The werewolves of Ossory were cursed, but they survived. Tuan Macairil transformed again and again, carrying history through form after form. The salmon of knowledge lived in water, but gave wisdom to a human. These stories declare the boundaries are negotiable. The forms are temporary. What lasts is consciousness, memory, the spark of self that can inhabit stag or salmon or man and remain itself. That understanding takes us skyward, where transformation grows feathers and learns to sing. Have you ever watched birds and felt a pang of longing? Bird transformations in mythology are almost always about loss, longing, and the painful beauty of being caught between two worlds. When gods or humans became birds in Irish mythology, it was rarely a gift. It was usually a curse, a punishment, or a tragic twist of fate. Yet these cursed beings often gained something precious in their suffering. They could fly. They could see the world from above. They could sing in ways humans never could. These transformations fall into three patterns: the cursed flock, the winged messengers, and the fragile flyers. The cursed flock tells the most heartbreaking story in Irish mythology. The children of Lear stand at its centre. Lear was a chieftain of the Tuatha De Danann. His wife died, leaving him with 4 children. He remarried, and his new wife, Aoife, grew jealous of the children. In a moment of rage and spite, she used druidic magic to transform them into swans. There was a limit to her power, though. She couldn't take their voices or their minds. They remained fully aware, fully themselves, just trapped in swan bodies. The curse had a timeline. 900 years total. When the curse finally broke, they would return to human form. The cruel twist: when they finally transformed back, they were 900 years old. They crumbled into dust moments after regaining their human bodies. Fionnuala, the eldest, became leader of her swan siblings. She sang to comfort them through centuries of loneliness. Her songs were so beautiful that people travelled just to hear them. Warriors would stop fighting when her voice drifted over the water. This teaches us that transformation can preserve something even as it takes everything else away. The children lost their bodies, their youth, their chance at normal lives. Yet they kept their love for each other. They kept their voices. They turned their curse into art. Swan maidens appear in related folklore. Women who wore feathered cloaks that let them shift between human and swan form. Unlike the children of Lear, these transformations were voluntary. The cloak was the key. If a man found a swan maiden's cloak while she was bathing, he could hide it and trap her on land. Like the Celtic, she'd always search for her cloak. When she found it, she'd transform back into a swan and fly away. The pattern repeats. Take away the mechanism of transformation, and you trap someone. They never stop longing. Eventually, they find their way back to their true form. The winged messengers represent beings whose bird form carried meaning, prophecy, or divine communication. Marcha, one of the aspects of the Morrigan, was linked to birds of omen. She could transform into winged creatures, often appearing as a crow or raven on battlefields. Her bird form wasn't about flight for its own sake. It was about observation, about being the eyes that see all. Birds in Irish mythology often served as messengers between worlds. They could cross the boundary between the mortal realm and the other world. Their flight made them liminal creatures, at home neither on earth nor in heaven, but in the space between. When a crow appeared before a battle, warriors paid attention. Was it just a bird, or was it Macha watching them? The fragile flyers show transformations into insects or small birds, shapes that emphasize vulnerability rather than power. Etein's transformation into a fly provides the best example. She was a goddess, radiant and powerful. When a rival grew jealous, she struck Etein with magic, transforming her into a tiny purple fly. For 7 years, Etein flew through Ireland as a fly, helpless and fragile. Every gust of wind could kill her. Every spider was a predator. Yet even as a fly, Etein remained herself. She was still conscious, still aware, still longing for her true form. Eventually, she fell into a cup of wine and was swallowed by a queen. She was reborn as a human, with no memory of her divine past. Her essence survived. The fly form didn't destroy her. It transported her to a new life. Imagine Fionuala, the swan sister, singing on a lake at dawn. A warrior hears her song and lays down his weapons. That day, he doesn't fight. He lives. He goes home to his family. One swan's voice, one moment of beauty, changes the trajectory of a life. The curse that trapped Fionnuala in feathers gave her a voice that could stop wars. Sky shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that transformation into birds was both tragedy and transcendence. The children of Lear lost their bodies, but kept their voices, their love, their humanity across 9 centuries. Etain lost her divine form, but survived through fragility, eventually finding rebirth. Birds fly between earth and sky, between the known and the unknowable. When you transform into a bird, you leave behind the solid ground of who you were. You enter the air, the uncertain space where anything might happen. We descend now from the sky into trickery, where transformation is a game and nothing is as it seems. What if you met someone who could be a horse, a goat, a man, a rabbit, all in the same evening? Trickster shapeshifters reveal how cultures think about chaos, uncertainty, and the beings that live outside all social rules. Trickster shapeshifters aren't evil, but they're not good either. They exist in the moral grey zone, sometimes helpful, often harmful, always unpredictable. Their shapeshifting isn't about survival or divine power. It's about play, about testing boundaries, about reminding humans that not everything in the world follows rules or makes sense. These beings organize into 3 categories: the road hazards, the seductive shifters, and the household hauntings. The road hazards make traveling dangerous and unpredictable. The poocher stands as king of this category. It appears most often as a sleek black horse, but it can also be a goat, a dog, a rabbit, or even a raggedy man. It haunts rural roads, crossroads, and fields. Its behavior is contradictory on purpose. Sometimes it gives helpful advice to travelers. Sometimes it leads them astray into bogs, where they nearly drown. Sometimes it offers a ride on its back, only to take the rider on a wild, terrifying gallop before dumping them miles from home, shaken but unharmed. The pooka's key trait is unpredictability. You never know which version you're going to get. That's the point. The poocher represents the fundamental uncertainty of traveling through wild places at night. Anything could happen. The shape that approaches you could be friendly or dangerous, and you won't know until it's too late. Yet the pooka was also associated with the harvest. In some regions, farmers would leave a small portion of their crop in the field as a tribute. If you respected it, it might leave you alone. It might even bring good luck. If you were stingy or disrespectful, the pooka might spoil your next harvest or cause mischief all winter long. The Far Darrig, whose name means red man, appears as a small man dressed in red, but he can shift his size or shape when it suits him. His favorite activity is frightening travelers, especially at night. He might suddenly appear as a giant looming over you on a dark road, or he might be a tiny voice whispering from a hole in the ground, leading you in circles until dawn. The Far Darrig doesn't usually cause permanent harm, but he loves to terrify. Why would the Irish tell stories about a being whose only purpose is to scare people? Because fear of the dark, of the unknown, of being lost, is universal. The Far Darrig gave that fear a face and a name. He made it something you could talk about, something you could prepare for by carrying iron or salt or saying prayers. The seductive shifters use beauty and charm to lure humans into dangerous situations. The Gunkana provides the clearest example. He appears as an impossibly handsome young man, often carrying a clay pipe. He hangs around lonely places, waiting for someone vulnerable to pass by. He strikes up a conversation. He's charming, witty, and attentive. He might share a kiss or an embrace. Then he vanishes, leaving his victim addicted to him, wasting away with longing for someone who never truly existed. The Gankanong's shape-shifting is subtle. He doesn't turn into animals. Instead, he shifts his persona, becoming exactly what his target wants to see. If you want a poet, he's poetic. If you want a warrior, he's fierce. He's a mirror showing you your desires, and that's why he's dangerous. This type of trickster reveals something uncomfortable. We're vulnerable to beings that tell us what we want to hear. The Gankanong preys on loneliness, on the human need for connection. The household hauntings involve trickster shapeshifters that live in or near human homes. The Cluricorn serves as a prime example. Related to leprechauns, it haunts cellars and wine stores. It appears as a tiny old man, usually drunk, wearing a red cap and leather apron. It steals wine and rides sheep or dogs through the fields at night. If you try to catch it, it changes size or slips away through cracks no human could fit through. The Cluricorn's shapeshifting is mostly about escape. It becomes smaller to hide, faster to flee, or sometimes larger to intimidate. Its goal isn't grand chaos. It's petty theft and drunken mischief. The cat Seath, a fairy cat, appears as a large black cat with a white spot on its chest. It haunts the Scottish Highlands and parts of Ireland. Some stories say the cat Seath was actually a witch who could transform into cat form 9 times. On the 9th transformation, she'd be stuck as a cat forever. The cat Seath was believed to steal souls from the recently dead if the body wasn't properly guarded. Imagine a farmer walking home at twilight. He sees a black horse by the road. Is it a normal horse, or is it the puka? He can't tell. That uncertainty makes him more careful, more respectful. He doesn't approach strange animals. He doesn't assume anything is safe. The existence of trickster shapeshifters has changed how he moves through the world. Trickster shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that not everything can be trusted or understood. The puka, Fardarig, Gankanong, Cluricorn, and cat Seath all represented different flavors of chaos. They also taught adaptation. If you learned their patterns, if you showed respect, if you carried protections, you could coexist with chaos without being destroyed by it. Tricksters are teachers through torment. If you pay attention, if you learn from each encounter, you become harder to fool. You become sharper, quicker, more aware. You learn that appearances deceive and that the safest path is to assume nothing is exactly what it seems. This understanding brings us to beings even more enigmatic, who use glamour itself as their shape-shifting tool. Have you ever seen something out of the corner of your eye that vanished when you looked directly? The ancient Irish would tell you that was the Sadi. Fairy shapeshifters reveal how cultures think about illusion, reality, and the thin places where both worlds touch. The Cedar, also called the Aosi, are the fairy folk of Ireland. They're the Tuatha De Danann, the ancient gods and peoples who ruled Ireland before humans, now living underground in fairy mounds. They're powerful, beautiful, and deeply dangerous. Their shape-shifting isn't about physically changing form as much as it is about glamour, about casting illusions that make you see what they want you to see. These manifestations fall into 3 categories: the illusionists, the soul thieves, and the otherworld lovers. The illusionists demonstrate mastery over perception itself. The AOC can look like humans, animals, or beings of pure light. They can make their homes appear as hills or stones to mortal eyes. They can make a feast appear sumptuous and endless when it's really just leaves and acorns. This is glamour magic at its finest. It's not a real transformation. It's making you believe you're seeing something you're not. This matters because it means you can't trust your senses around fairies. That beautiful woman might be a fairy queen testing you. That lavish meal might disappear come morning. The golden coins a fairy gives, you might turn into dried leaves by dawn. Fairy queens are particularly skilled at glamour. They rule the other world and can appear however they choose when dealing with mortals. Sometimes they're impossibly beautiful. Sometimes they're terrifying. Sometimes they're indistinguishable from mortal women. Walking through markets or standing at crossroads, testing human character. The Soul Thieves show where fairy shapeshifting turns dark. Changelings are the most famous example. A changeling is a fairy infant, or sometimes an old fairy, who uses glamour to appear as a human baby. Fairies would steal healthy human babies from their cradles and leave changelings in their place. To the parents, it looked like their child, same size, same shape, crying the same way. Yet the child would be strange. It might be constantly sick, or unusually intelligent, or age rapidly, or never grow at all. The horror of changelings isn't just theft, it's mimicry. The fairies used glamour to make their substitutes look exactly like your child. You might raise a changeling for years before realizing the truth. That's shapeshifting as a violation, as the deepest possible betrayal of trust. The banshee, or bean-sea, shapeshifts between three primary forms: a young woman, an old crone, or a spectral mourner with a veil. She appears to families before someone dies, wailing and keening to announce the coming death. Sometimes she's washing bloody clothes in a river. Sometimes she combs her long hair with a silver comb. Sometimes she's just a voice in the night. The banshee's shape-shifting reflects the phases of grief itself. The young woman represents life cut short. The old crone represents death in its natural time. The veiled mourner represents grief that can't show its face. The otherworld lovers are fairies who use glamour to seduce mortals and lure them into the fairy realm. Fairy lovers appear in many stories, always stunningly attractive, always impossible to resist. They might appear at a dance, at a crossroads, by a fairy mound. They offer a dance, a kiss, a night of passion. Then they take you to the other world. The trap. Time moves differently there. A night in the other world might be a year in the mortal world, or 10 years, or 100. When you finally return, everyone you knew is dead. Your home is in ruins. Consider a young man who sees a beautiful woman at a festival. She invites him to dance. He notices small oddities. Her feet barely touch the ground. Her eyes are a color that doesn't exist. Her laugh sounds like bells. He remembers the stories about fairy lovers. He refuses the dance politely. He lives a normal life, marries a mortal woman, grows old. Yet he always wonders, what if? The fairy's glamour didn't fully work because he was protected by knowledge. The Cedar and fairy glamour shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that appearances are always suspect. The most beautiful face might hide something ancient and inhuman. In a world where fairies use glamour to deceive, your only defense is knowledge, knowing the signs, remembering the stories, keeping your wits when everything looks too good to be true. Fairies don't change their bodies, they change your perception. That's far more dangerous. You can't fight what you can't see clearly. This understanding brings us to the humans who learn to wield similar powers through study and magic. What if you could learn to shapeshift through study, through practice, through mastering ancient words and rituals? Druidic shapeshifting reveals how cultures think about knowledge as power. Druids were the priests, judges, and scholars of ancient Celtic society. They studied for 20 years or more, memorizing laws, histories, genealogies, and magic. Among their most feared powers was shapeshifting, not as an inherent ability, but as a learned skill. They could cast the Feth Fiada, a magic mist that made them invisible or allowed them to take animal form. These practices fall into three categories: the mist workers, the giant changers, and the poet shifters. The mist workers wielded the most important druidic technique. The Feth Fiada means magic mist, or veil of invisibility. A druid could cast this over themselves or others, rendering them invisible to enemies or allowing them to appear as something else entirely. It wasn't physical transformation. It was perceptual magic. You didn't actually become a deer. You made everyone see a deer where you stood. The Tuatha De Danann used the Feth Fiada extensively. When they were defeated by the Milesians, they used this magic to hide themselves and their dwellings, slipping into the fairy mounds where mortals couldn't follow. In battle, a druid might cast Feth Fiada over an entire warband, letting them approach an enemy camp unseen. The key was that the magic required knowledge, specific words, specific gestures, specific timing. Only someone trained in druidic arts could wield the mist. This reveals something profound about how the ancient Irish viewed magic. It wasn't a supernatural gift. It was a skill, like smithing or poetry, that required years of apprenticeship. Anyone could learn it if they had the discipline. The giant changers developed specialized abilities that went beyond the standard Feth Fiada. Mug Ruith provides the most dramatic example. He was a powerful druid who possessed a Roth Ramas, a magical flying wheel that blazed with fire. He could use this wheel to fly through the air like a comet. Mug Ruith could also grow gigantic, becoming a towering figure that blotted out the sun. Or he could transform into monstrous shapes. He represented the druid as a cosmic force, as someone who had mastered not just invisibility or animal forms, but the very fabric of reality itself. The poet shifters possessed their own form of shapeshifting, spiritual transformation through language and trance. In Irish tradition, poets and druids were closely linked. Amergin Gluingal provides the perfect example. He was the poet of the Milesians. When his people's ship approached the shore, Amergin stood at the prow and sang a poem. He declared, "I am wind on sea, I am wave of ocean, I am murmur of billows." In this poem, Amergin didn't just describe these things, he claimed to be them. He merged his identity with the elements and animals of Ireland, spiritually shape-shifting into the land itself. This kind of shape-shifting was visionary, achieved through poetic trance and deep meditation. The poet didn't physically become wind or salmon. In their consciousness, in their spiritual understanding, they did. Druidic and magical shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that transformation could be learned, that it didn't require divine birth or fairy blood. A human being, through discipline and study, could wield the same powers as gods. This brings us to the heroes themselves, the legendary warriors who reshaped their own bodies through will and battle fury. What happens when a human pushes past every physical and mental limit? In Irish mythology, they transform. Heroic shapeshifters reveal how cultures think about peak human potential and the price of greatness. Heroes in Irish mythology weren't just strong or skilled. They were liminal figures who could touch something beyond humans. Their transformations weren't learned like druidic magic. They were unleashed by extreme circumstances, battle rage, sacred rituals, or consuming sources of wisdom. These transformations divide into three categories: the wisdom transformed, the battle monsters, and the vision seekers. The wisdom transformed show how consuming knowledge can alter your being. Fionn mac Cumhaill stands at the centre. Before he gained his wisdom, he was just a boy named Dimne. Then came the moment that changed everything, cooking the salmon of knowledge for his master Finnegas. A splash of hot fat from the salmon burned his thumb. He put it in his mouth to ease the pain, and in that instant, all the salmon's accumulated wisdom flooded into him. Fionn didn't physically transform in that moment, but he was never the same. From then on, whenever he needed knowledge, he would put his thumb in his mouth, and the wisdom would come. He'd gained the salmon's ability to know, to see patterns invisible to others. In a sense, he'd merged with the salmon. This is transformation through consumption, through taking something's essence into yourself. You don't wear the salmon's shape. You carry its nature inside your own. Fionn's gift gave him animal intuition. He could track like a hound, see like a hawk, sense danger like a deer. He'd gained not just knowledge, but the way animals perceive the world. This made him the greatest leader of Fianna, the battle monsters show where Irish heroic shapeshifting becomes visceral and terrifying. Cu Chulainn, Ireland's greatest warrior, provides the ultimate example. In normal life, he was a handsome young man, small in stature but radiant with otherworldly beauty. In battle, Cu Chulainn underwent something called the Riastrad, usually translated as warp spasm or distortion. It was a transformation so violent that he became a monster. One eye would sink into his head. The other would bulge out, huge and bloodshot. His mouth would stretch back to his ears, foam pouring from it. His hair would stand on end. His entire body would contort, bones breaking and reforming, until he looked more like a demon than a man. In this state, he couldn't distinguish friend from enemy. He would kill anyone nearby unless someone could cool his rage. The Riastrad made him invincible in combat, but cost him his humanity temporarily. This serves as a metaphor for the cost of war. You become effective, unstoppable even, but you lose something essential. The person who enters battle isn't quite the person who comes out. The vision seekers achieve temporary shapeshifting through trance and vision. The Fili would enter deep meditative states seeking inspiration. During these trances, they claimed their spirits could leave their bodies and take animal form, traveling to distant places or even to the other world. This wasn't a physical transformation, it was spiritual. To the ancient Irish, the distinction wasn't clear. If your consciousness inhabited an eagle's body and you saw the world from the sky, had you not become an eagle in some meaningful sense? Human and heroic shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that transformation wasn't only for gods or fairies. Humans could touch it too, though the results were unpredictable and often costly. Fionn gained wisdom by consuming it. Cu Chulainn gained invincibility in battle, but lost his humanity temporarily. The poets gained insight by letting their spirits travel in animal form. Now we turn to beings whose transformations were part of the earth itself, who became rivers and mountains and seasons. What if transformation wasn't just changing your shape, but becoming the land itself? Elemental shapeshifters reveal how the ancient Irish saw the relationship between gods, nature, and the very ground they walked on. Elemental shapeshifters didn't just take temporary forms, they became permanent features of the landscape. When a goddess transformed into a river, she didn't lose consciousness or die. She continued as the river, aware, powerful, eternal. These transformations fall into three categories: the river becomers, the season shifters, and the land embodiments. The river becomers experienced transformation as both curse and apotheosis. Boann was a goddess who approached Conla's well, a sacred spring surrounded by 9 hazel trees. The well and its trees contained all wisdom, and no one was supposed to approach without proper authority. Boann walked around the well 3 times, defying its power. They responded well. Its waters rose up in fury, pursuing her. Boann ran, but the water was faster. It chased her across island, carving a channel as it went. Finally, it caught her and swept her away. She didn't die. She became the water. Her body, her consciousness, her divine essence merged with the flood, and when it settled, the river Boyne flowed where there had been only land before. The River Boyne is one of Ireland's most important waterways. Every time the sun rises on winter solstice and illuminates Newgrange's inner chamber, it's doing so over Boann's flowing body. She's still there, still powerful, still divine. Sinan's story parallels this pattern. She sought the well of wisdom, wanting knowledge that was forbidden to her. The waters rose and overwhelmed her, just as they did Boann. She became the River Shannon, Ireland's longest river. Both transformations happened because of defiance, because goddesses refused to accept limits on their knowledge or power. The transformations were punishments, yes, but they were also strange apotheoses. Boann and Sinan lost their original forms, but gained something immense. They became permanent, essential, worshipped. The season's shifters embodied cyclical time itself. The Cailleach Beara serves as the ultimate example. She's ancient beyond measure. She shaped the landscape, dropping stones from her apron to form mountains, creating lakes with strikes of her staff. In winter, she appears as an old hag, withered and fierce. She brings cold, storms, and harshness. As spring approaches, something miraculous happens. The Cailleach walks to a sacred well and drinks from it. She's transformed into a young maiden, vibrant and full of life. Some say she becomes Brigid, the spring goddess. As summer passes, she ages again, growing older through autumn, becoming the crone once more by winter. This cycle repeats endlessly. She is the wheel of the year made flesh. She doesn't fight aging. She doesn't fear death. She knows that death leads to rebirth, that winter leads to spring. The land embodiments show how the Irish saw consciousness in the landscape itself. Wind and mist spirits in Irish mythology were fluid by nature, shifting between visible and invisible, solid and ephemeral. When mist rolled over the hills, it might be just weather, or it might be spirits taking form. Mountains and lakes throughout Ireland were believed to be former women or goddesses transformed by time or magic. The landscape was narrative, every feature telling a story of transformation. Nature goddesses weren't separate from nature. They were nature, given consciousness and will. When you walked on a mountain, you walked on the body of a goddess. When you drank from a stream, you drank her essence. Elemental and nature shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that transformation could be permanent and vast. When gods became rivers, they didn't diminish. They expanded. They became essential to life, to the land, to the daily existence of every creature in Ireland. Finally, we come to the darkest shapeshifters of all, those who transform not by choice but by curse, by punishment, by the cruelty of others. What's the worst thing you can imagine happening to your body? For the ancient Irish, it was being trapped in a form you didn't choose, couldn't control, couldn't escape. Cursed shapeshifters reveal how cultures think about punishment, justice, and the loss of autonomy. Not all transformation was chosen or earned. Some were inflicted as punishment, as revenge, as an expression of magical anger. Cursed shapeshifters lost their human forms involuntarily and suffered in shapes they never wanted. These transformations fall into three categories: the jealousy cursed, the justice transformed, and the collateral changed. The jealousy cursed suffered transformation born from envy and spite. Oife, stepmother of the children of Lear, provides the clearest example. She married Lear after his first wife died, becoming stepmother to his 4 beloved children. Over time, jealousy grew. Lear doted on his children. The Tuatha De Danann adored them. Oife felt invisible, unloved, replaced. One day she took the children to a lake. While they were swimming, she raised a druidic wand and spoke a curse. The children transformed into swans. Oife's power had limits, though. She couldn't take their voices or their minds. They remained fully aware, fully themselves, trapped in swan bodies for 900 years. Eventually, the conditions for breaking the curse were met. The swans transformed back into humans. They'd been swans for 9 centuries. They crumbled into dust moments after regaining human form. Oife's jealousy had turned children into swans and ultimately into dust. She didn't intend to destroy them entirely, but her curse had unforeseen consequences. This teaches that magical punishment can spiral beyond what the punisher intended. In other Irish tales, jealous wives and lovers frequently cursed rivals into animals or stones. A woman discovers her husband has been unfaithful. She turns the other woman into a deer. A goddess loves a mortal man, but he loves someone else. She turns the rival into a standing stone, immobile and aware. These transformations are acts of erasure. The jealous party can't stand for the rival to exist as they are, so they transform them into something lesser, something that can't compete, can't speak. The justice transformed experienced punishment for crimes or sins, administered by druids or gods as correction. Leinech Feilead provides an early example in Irish werewolf mythology. The core story is that he or his ancestor was cursed to become a wolf, and the curse passed through his family line. The crime that triggered the curse isn't always clear, but the punishment's severity suggests something serious. Breaking an oath, killing kin, violating sacred hospitality laws. The ancient Irish had strict social codes, and breaking them could result in magical punishment. Cursed kings appear in several legends. A king who ruled unjustly or broke sacred laws might be transformed into a beast as divine judgment. This wasn't random bad luck. It was cosmic correction, the land itself rejecting a ruler who failed his duties. These justice transformations worked as deterrents. If you knew that breaking sacred oaths could get you turned into an animal, you thought twice before lying. The collateral changed were people transformed not because they did anything wrong, but because they were caught in someone else's magical conflict. In some variants of Deirdre's story, her spirit becomes a bird upon death. Deirdre was a woman whose beauty caused a war, though she wanted no part of it. Her life was a tragedy, forced into situations she couldn't control. In death, becoming a bird was an escape. This transformation wasn't her choice. It was the result of curses, prophecies, and conflicts that had nothing to do with her actions and everything to do with how others saw her. Many Irish tales end with transformation as moral or emotional punishment that seems disproportionate. A person makes one mistake, picking the wrong flower, walking through the wrong grove, and they're transformed for life. These stories reflect anxiety about how fragile human agency is in a world where magic exists. Consider the children of Lear as swans, singing on the lake. People come from miles around to hear them. The beauty of their voices comforts the grieving, inspires poets, brings peace to warriors. The children's curse has created something beautiful that touches thousands of lives. cursed and punished shapeshifters taught the ancient Irish that transformation could be violation, the ultimate theft of autonomy. When Ive cursed the children of Lear, she didn't just change their bodies. She stole 900 years of their lives. These stories are warnings about power and its abuse. They're also acknowledgments of a hard truth. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, not because of justice or karma, but because someone with power decided to harm them. Even in these dark stories, the human spirit persists. The children of Lear kept their voices, their love for each other, their humanity across 9 centuries in swan form. The cursed werewolves kept their reason and speech. The lesson, in the end, is that form isn't everything. You can be trapped in the wrong body and still be yourself. You can lose your shape and keep your soul. The ancient Irish understood that identity runs deeper than flesh, that consciousness persists even when everything else is taken away. We've now walked through all 10 types of shapeshifters in Irish mythology, from divine gods who changed at will, to water beings who lured and drowned, to animals who carried wisdom, to birds who sang in sorrow, to tricksters who delighted in chaos, to fairies who wove illusions, to druids who learned the magic mist, to heroes who transformed through battle and wisdom, to goddesses who became rivers and mountains, and finally to those cursed into forms they never wanted.